Hey y'all, welcome to the Standing on Business podcast, where ambition meets action. From career moves to life lessons,
our podcast is dedicated to supporting you as you navigate both the personal and professional growth journey,
ultimately giving you the confidence to always stand in your truth.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Standing on Business podcast. Today we're going to be diving into the power of male mentorship and advocacy. In our last episode, you may remember that we sat down with our mentor, Deborah Grimes, and she shared a lot about mentorship from the female perspective, and so we thought that it'd only be right to bring the conversation back to the table from the male perspective and, give a little bit more credence to the importance of what it is to have male guidance in your life. And so with that stated, today we have the wonderful Sonny Lee here, who is the founder and CEO of Son of a Saint in New Orleans, which is an amazing mentorship organization for young boys in the city. And so, welcome, Sonny.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I woke up, got my coffee,
Good.
appreciative of everything that's happened this morning, and, it's great being here with y'all, so.
Simple things sometimes.
Simple things.
I
Gotta
know.
stay grounded and,
Yes, we're very excited to have you here, and we want you to give your elevator pitch and tell our listeners a little bit about who you are. Amari gave you a great opening, but
I'm from New Orleans.
Okay.
I'm from New Orleans, and my accent comes out.
It's okay. We want you to be your authentic self. This is a safe space.
Of course.
And also, this is something we do with everybody, so don't feel like we're just putting you on the spot.
No worries. So yeah, I'm from New Orleans, and I'm the son of Cynthia Lee and Bivian Lee. My father is from Texas. He passed when I was young. My mom raised me. I grew up in a Catholic family. Education was preached. A lot of discipline. You had to make your bed. You had to drink your milk at dinner time. You had to do your homework, come in before the street lights. You had to go, went to church on Sunday. I participated in everything. So it was a very structured upbringing, which was awesome, and was what I needed. And so I'm just trying to make New Orleans as great as it is for kids out there, like it was for me, to be honest with you. So I can go into more detail, but
no, we're gonna get into your journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I do want to start with an icebreaker too, so we can keep getting to know you, but maybe in a little more creative way.
All right.
So let's start with something fun. No,
you're doing great.
It's good. We'll start with something easy and light.
All right, that works.
If you had to choose one fictional character that you believe embodies the values of Son of a Saint,
Wow,
who would it be and why?
it's a great question. It's a different question.
Yeah.
Probably T'Challa from Black Panthers, definitely because he lost his father to violence, and if we support boys in that way, but had a lot of lessons that he learned along the way, obstacles, challenges, overcame them to be a great leader. So I would say that would be mine.
I love that. I think
Yeah.
it's very
that's a good
fitting. Yeah, I was
character.
like, we're going to go Batman, we're going to go Superman.
I
He
know.
came in and
No, you're very unique character.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so in that, I think you kind of went deep with that. So let's keep going in that direction. My second question, I guess, is with you going into this endeavor, and you've been doing this for a while now, you've had time to create kind of some sustainable relationships with the boys. What's one quality that you've seen in the boys that you mentor that you wish more adults embrace?
Oh, wow. I mean, resiliency for sure. I mean, and that word gets talked about a lot, especially after, I feel like Katrina, it's like we're resilient people, New Orleans are resilient, but, our boys truly are. I mean, there's so much that they're going through that the average person doesn't even know, you know what I mean, and tap into. But they can teach us a lot. And as adults, we obviously have our own challenges, and we're trying to grow our families, our businesses, be within systems, and so are our boys, but they're doing that a lot of times, specifically our boys, without the guidance of men, right? And so I would say that is probably one of the biggest things, is just showing that resilience overall, but doing it I said with a smile on your face, but sort of like, knowing that you'll get through it. We've all survived everything. I guess everybody here has, right?
Yeah, you've made it 100% through all of your bad days.
I mean, all of your bad days, right? And there's more to come. But I think our boys are doing an amazing job of doing that, and they're a great example. If they can do it, we can as adults.
Sonny, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I love your answer. I think another thing that I want to add is that's important for women to understand as well. My story is very similar to yours. I lost my father as a teenager, and to your point, it's kind of like resilience is the reward that you get for continuing on your journey when you feel like you're in a dark space, or or you feel like, what's next, or how do I continue? And I think, to your point, growing up with a single mother, like, that's a lot, and your mom can give you everything that she can give you, but there is something unique about having a male presence in a father figure role, or just a positive male influence who can help guide you from the lens of masculinity or strength, just things like that. And so I really appreciate you sharing it because, one, it helps to mold men into men, but also it helps women to understand the balance of not having to overcompensate for something that may not be there.
That's a great point.
So, it's hard.
Yes.
So,
We'll start interviewing you. Hold on.
Well, listen, we'll get better acquainted as we continue, but it's all good. But with that, I would love to hear more about, what that looked for you and kind of how that formulated in your mind of like, hey, like, this was my experience, but it doesn't have to be that for other people. And so with that, I think Bianca has a nice little segment.
Right. So you started to tell us a little bit about your journey, but we want to know, like, this is our segment from point A to point B, A to B. Every journey has a starting point, and we would really like to know, like, what was your starting point? What led you to where you are today? You talked a little bit about it. And then how did your personal experiences shape your focus on male mentorship specifically?
Yeah, I mean, for me, everything started when I was looking at my father take his last breath. I mean, I was 3 years old. It was my earliest memory. And I remember, like, the funeral, the maroon carpet, like, these little things that are imprinted in my mind to this day. But looking back, that's really what sort of started my journey into what I'm doing now, or what we're doing as a team and supporting kids. I think looking back, as well as what my mom was sort of going through and losing the love of her life, right? My mom is 75 and still to this day is madly in love with my father, right? So he was 36 at the time. She was like 34. So when you look at that, you see, like, her own loss in there. My mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a few years later. And for me, at the time, I thought it was a death sentence for her too, right? Because I remember her putting me on the bed and saying, "Sonny," and Tamika, my sister, I've been diagnosed with this, and I thought I was losing her too, right? And I had a couple friends that actually lost their fathers to multiple sclerosis. But she's here. She's with us. And she's overcome a lot of her own challenges with health, and watching her and seeing her, she was the best example for me is my mom. I mean, without my mom, there is no son of a saint, and other experiences that I had along the way. I think, it was tough, I guess, during my adolescent years trying to figure out where I belong, right? In the group of even kids that I had, the males that I was around, the kids in the neighborhood that had fathers, and it felt like they were advancing faster than I was in certain things, right? They had their dads teaching them how to, do stuff around the house, how to cut grass, and, all of these various things that I didn't sort of experience at the time, whether it be just fishing or painting or, I don't know, how to deal with your emotions and anger, right? So I got in a lot of fights when I was younger, right? Because I didn't know how to handle conflict. I mean, and things of like, that's not fair, my father's not there, right? For whatever reason. And so even though I think I had it, I would say better than most as far as the safety and security of a good home, of a family and friends, of a loving environment, I didn't have to necessarily worry about some of the things that our Son of a Saint boys worry about at times when it comes to just general safety and security. But it was really when I got to St. Aug, which completely changed, I think, my outlook on things. And when I got there, my uncles went there as well. And it was the first time I was around black males my entire life that on a daily basis that had an expectation of me greater than what anybody else had and held me to it, which was the most important thing. And I got paddled. We had the paddle back then, so corporal punishment. And not everybody. Look, everybody that went through it, it was a rite of passage. They wouldn't have taken that experience away, And we had the women teachers hit us too, so it wasn't just the males.
It was equitable.
It was equitable. It definitely was, but that was a period. Those 4 years was something I would never ever give up at all, because it was, even though I felt like a fly on the wall a lot of times, because a lot of my classmates may have had their fathers and had a different, they were just so reassured of who they were as black boys or black teenagers. I was growing into that. You know what I'm saying? I had some coaches when I was younger, but it was just a different relationship. When you have the teachers that you're looking at that look like you, that are connected to the culture and everything. And so that was very important for me as well. I could keep going on. So you tell me where to start.
I was about to ask, can you tell our listeners, what is St. Aug if they're not from New Orleans?
Yeah, it's great. So St. Aug is, it's a all-black male private Catholic school in New Orleans. Probably, I guess it was started back in the 50s. So it's discipline, it's education. Obviously, we talk about the band and music. Everybody asks if we were in the band. But, it's black excellence. And so that's what I was around. And that's what I needed, and so we tried to, as much as possible, do that for our Son of a Saint boys. Nice.
I know that was important for me to just
absolutely
because that definitely shows you were able to get that experience, and then ultimately that helped shape where you are today.
Absolutely. Yep.
No, and a lot of your points resonated with me as well, and it's surprising kind of hearing more of your background, because I'm like, Sonny, you my cousin, because we got a lot of similarities.
we might
be connected.
Yeah.
But
what about you? What was your upbringing?
I was going to say, I'm from Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Flip the script.
Listen, I was born and raised in Atlanta, originally from the East Side, so in Decatur. And when I was entering elementary school, I ended up moving to Cobb County, so polar type of culture. So one is East Side, it's a little bit more rough around the edges, more real. And then when I moved to Cobb, the moniker there is kind of you're a Cobb snob. It's the suburbs. So for me, I think to your point, I grew up when I moved to the suburbs. I grew up around a lot of 2-parent households. And so I identified with looking around and feeling well, I'm the one who doesn't have a dad to come to the father-daughter dance, or I'm the one who doesn't have a dad to help me with sports. And so I think I started kind of trying to realize okay, let's take a step back. As I got older, I realized that everyone's growth and path isn't linear. And so whereas you all may be ahead of me when we're in elementary school and middle school, when I start getting into extracurriculars and applying myself and doing internships, okay, now I can kind of see the degrees of separation of how you can create success for yourself and kind of break those generational curses if you're willing to put in the work and stop those detrimental cycles. And so, to your point, when I started thinking about, okay, how can I create a better life just for myself? Because I said this in our interview with Deb, but I didn't necessarily grow up with role models. I feel I grew up with a lot of examples of what not to do. And so I started thinking about how can I be what I needed when I was a child for just my children. And then the more I got into being mentored formally, it was okay, no, I need to also start strategizing and thinking how I can pour back in this space as well, because to your point, high school me, college me, baby, I was a hot mess and lost. And so to your point of getting in fights and not knowing how to repurpose anger or navigate certain relationships and being too bold, it was my mentors who kind of stepped in and changed the course of my trajectory, and without them I'd still be lost. And so that's kind of what birthed my passion for wanting to be in healthcare. I also grew up
and
with...
wanted to do this.
Yes, I was going to say, I grew up with a grandparent in the home who she has a bunch of like comorbidities and a slew of things, but also the sweetest lady. I love my grandma now.
You know, we always talk about her. We love our grandmas this morning.
Yes.
They keep it real with you. That's one thing for sure.
Shout out to Glory. I love you, girl.
But no, at the time, also like sitcoms, I think, where the families, the Jefferson, like these different shows, I think showed, you know, the black family. That's what I gravitated to.
And we're definitely 90s babies, so we grew up seeing, and so with that too, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it was important.
Because without me having my dad, having a grandmother in the home that pretty much I was a caretaker for, and then my mom was working 2 and 3 jobs at a time. Sometimes I was raised on TV, and so that was my role model of like, I want to be like a Huxtable and Cliff, and like maybe I don't have that, but I can be that. So that is also a piece I think for our guests to hear, is that you can always be flexible and nimble in your journey. You just have to be willing to pivot into your purpose and keep going with it. And I think kind of going back to childhood where you mentioned like, oh, everybody has all these advantages. I think a lot of times we don't give enough respect to the fact that life is happening for you, not to you. Right. And even sometimes you're not even mature enough to understand that.
You're right.
But all of those negative experiences subsequently round out helping you to your purpose. And so had you not had the loss of your father, had I not had the loss of mine, Son of a Saint may not exist. This podcast may not exist. You know,
it's funny. So my dad played for the Saints. You know, he was a defensive back, and my mom never wanted me to play football. She just did everything she could.
Your mom is
she didn't want you to be injured.
So my dad, he was like, no, I don't want you to play sports at all. Well, not sports, sorry. I don't want you to play football. I'll play baseball, tennis. I'll play all these different sports. But my natural ability, I felt like, was football. I'm like, man, I could throw this ball 60 yards accurate. You know, I could. And my boys always tell me we'd be sitting around eating nice right now had I been playing football. Maybe, who knows? But, you know, I think even if I went down that road, who knows? But I'd still be doing this work in the community. And it's interesting how things, at the end of the day, show up the way they do. And, you know, I think also, when I was young, I did a lot of volunteerism. Like I was always volunteering, and I wanted to ask you if you did that as a child too.
100%. So Bianca and I are both in service-based Greek letter organizations. But aside from that, to your point, I think when you have the lens of you feel like maybe you don't have enough in your cup, you understand that life perspective as opposed to being like green to it of like, oh, everything is rainbows and sunshine and everyone's happy and everyone has. So I think growing up in scarcity made me want to give back to people once I kind of climbed out of those stages in life. So I've always volunteered. So starting from high school, it was like, okay, like I'll go to the local elementary school and read to the kids there. Like I don't mind being a mentor because I'm older than you know, and like field day, volunteering there. And then in college, it was a little bit more formalized of like going and helping out at soup kitchens. I was a volunteer for the Special Olympics in Georgia, helping those kids. So I've had a myriad of experiences in volunteerism, but I think, again, like when you come out of something hard, it's like, okay, I never want to go back to that, but I also want to save as many people from that as well. I think kind of just to combat some of the survivor's remorse that you feel of like, I made it out, but everybody doesn't always, but it's like as many people as I can take with me and put on my back as I can, let me do that.
Okay, I'm very similar. I love the parallel with y'all stories. I feel like Sonny's interviewing
I know,
you.
right?
I love it though.
No, but as like we talked about both your journeys at this point, I feel like I'm interviewing y'all. Look, we can switch up the episode. But as both of y'all journeys, like it's very inspiring. You know, we're best friends. So I know your journey, and I want you to dive more into it. Like, we'll probably do another episode of that. But, you know, just with it being so inspiring, and then with Sonny, like, you starting Son of a Saint, like, you had the vision for it. And obviously it takes a lot of courage. Like, I know there's a lot of people out there that probably want to start a nonprofit, and either, like, in the mentorship space or just a nonprofit in general. Like, what advice would you give someone, like, wanting to start one? Man. And then how old is Son of a Saint now? 11 years?
We turned 14 in January.
14, okay.
I'm going to take my 3 years, actually.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. 14 years, we turned 14 in January. No, it was, I mean, look, starting Son of a Saint, it felt like therapy for me, too, honestly, like. I did a different program. I was a mentor for them several years before I started. And there was a lot of challenges with it, right? And, which is I was a young mentor. I was 24 at the time, and they paired me in like 2 days, and it just wasn't the best sort of connection. And I was same thing. What sort of not to do helped me develop what to do, I guess, when it related to that. But I remember it was after a Saints game, and I was with my sister, and I saw that there was a boy that had murdered another boy, and actually it was an accident. That the gun went off, and I guess they were robbing somebody or something like that. And I just said, man, I want to be able to support kids, and it sort of how I was, I thought I had how I was supported. And, I got a group of friends, and we had our first board meeting. I didn't know what I was doing at the board meeting. I was like, we're going to get everybody together. At the time I was 29.
Oh, okay.
So I'm 43 now, but, so it wasn't that long ago, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it was. But, I was like, let me get everybody together. We're going to go sit at a conference table and have our agenda and do it. You know what I mean? It was just, we did that, and it was rough the first several years, So I always tell people, and we get this a lot, people that may come to us and ask us.
That's the main question.
And look, I love that. I love that people want to give, and then we try to give as much advice and support as possible. I think sometimes people want to, they have a vision and they want to be there tomorrow, and it really takes a lot of time. It takes years, because there's so many different pieces to just doing the work, right? Yeah. Like so at first, I didn't have connection to kids, so I went to the park, tapped the coach on the shoulder, introduced myself in Pontchartrain Park, Digby, whatever, and I was like, hey, can I, do you have boys that are growing up without fathers? It was very random, and their moms were there, and I literally, Miss Mary, I think my first ones, she was working the concession, and she was like, take my number down. And then we just started. And now we didn't have all our policies and procedures and all of our mentor. We didn't have any. It was just me.
Yeah.
Right now you have to have. It's more formalized. Yeah. But I remember talking to my play uncle, Uncle Vic. He was the head of NORD at the time. I was like, look, I want to support thousands of kids. And he's like, just take one kid. You know what I'm saying? Just start helping one kid at a time. And so I always try to ground or level people's expectations on what they want to, if they want to that's great, have that vision, but you really have to have your I's dotted, your T's crossed. You have to understand nonprofit. And I also take it very seriously, right? I've got a master's in nonprofit. So for me, when somebody comes, I always have to sort of even ground myself and say, okay, maybe this person is not trying to build the son of a saint. Yeah. But maybe they're just trying to do a little something.
So make their deposits.
Make their deposits, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes I always have to, but I would say just educate yourselves on the nonprofit sector, but I also say ask someone to shadow them, right? If somebody's like, hey, can I shadow you for 2 weeks? Can I come to my meetings or whatever you want to do? You'll wind up figuring out where you should start and jump in at, even in your own, because there's a lot of just 101 that has to be done to start a nonprofit. You know what I mean?
Any resources specifically that you felt were really helpful? I know you said you got a degree.
Yeah, my degree was actually I went and got my master's 2-3 years ago. I did it on from Notre Dame. I went and got it on the backside. They used actually a lot of the stuff that we have already done in the classroom. So our capital campaigns, our board management, all of that stuff. Okay. So for me, honestly, it was just more the credibility of having it, we
talk about it a lot.
I'm just keeping it real.
Without credentials, you cannot
there you go. There you go.
You don't have the back end to
That's true. That's true. And so it just, certain people take you more serious, I guess, when you have it, And so, but anyway, did that. I guess resources for me, I was just sort of in it. I think I have a good understanding of people, but the biggest thing for me is now I'm so external. I have to deal with a lot of the donors and a lot of the high level partners, and setting a strategic plan for us, that I'm not in the weeds anymore, and I don't have the connections to the boys that I used to have, if that makes sense, right? Because we have a team. And so that's one of the things that's hard. I guess to your question, you were talking about what resources out there. There are places that have general resources on how to start a nonprofit. I know Ganoff has one, and there's probably some others. but the internet, I mean, AI, books, I mean, it's like everything is like readily available to you, but really getting that experience is probably the most important. So like I said earlier, going to talk to a nonprofit leader, specifically over mentorship group, and saying, hey, can I just shadow you? It's really tough because you try to find space for everybody, and you know, but just a shadow sometimes can go a long, long way. For sure.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of times when you ask people about their career trajectory or how they got to where they are, they tell you the story, but they don't give you the how.
Right.
You know, like they don't tell you, okay, if you need a blueprint to also do this, this is what I did step by step, or here's what I would advise of maybe some steps I didn't take, but would be super beneficial had I, you know, done X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Maybe I'll have some of it in the book.
No. It's all good. So no, we'll connect with you offline so that we can embed like any like
for sure.
concrete resources. Yes. But another point that you made earlier is, you know, your willingness and your want and your drive and desire to get out in the community and connect with people. And, you know, when it was just bare grassroots of like, it's just me, you know, but I have this desire and I have this vision, and I, you know, want to connect with the community to bring it to life and to personify it, you know? And so I think we've talked a lot about the immediate impact of mentorship on the boys within Son of a Saint, but I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that ripple effect and ask you, how do you see, or how have you felt the mentorship extending beyond the individuals that you work with? And how has it created a lasting change in the community and with the families that you're connected to?
Yeah, I can answer it a couple of ways. I think one, even the relationship that that particular boy has with his mentor goes both ways. So, and that's like real. That
you gotta put in the work.
Bi-directional. Yeah, I need to get on my that is extremely important to it. You know, because even when I was starting it, I was still trying to figure my own self out, you know, and then I had my son in 2014 and Tenzin, and so it kind of like I started to see myself in even a different way than mentoring, but we get so much out of the relationship that it's incredible. Just that trust and responsibility that a mom gives us, that a boy does, it's also builds confidence there. You're answering questions that you never thought about, you know, like being asked. It makes you look at the world a little different. You start getting resources to share, and you're reading them too, and you know, so I think it goes that way. I think for our boys, or our young men, I guess, and our oldest is probably 25 now.
Wow.
You know, our younger, when we have a boy that actually, I keep saying boy, a young man, he started his own nonprofit. Our oldest name's Julio.
That's a great ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly. So he's helping other people, and he's from Honduras, and but he lost his father when he was, I think, 13, and started in Son of a Saint. He was my intern for a while and started working for us. We have another young man at West Point, you know, that's actually about to graduate. He's on the football team there, who at our fundraiser we did in New York got up and spoke. I mean, better than any adult I've ever seen even speak. And he's 20, he's probably 22 right now, you know what I mean? So, and he's a great example for the younger boys in the program. I also say we have siblings that a lot of them join our program, they're brothers, you know. So I think in the family unit, you're able to sort of support the entire group, two-generational approach, you know, supporting the boys, but also the guardians as well. So it helps the family in general. And I think the younger brothers looking up to their big brothers in a unique way, always good, and building them into mentors. It can be answered a few different ways.
Oh, I love that. I was going to say, and I really appreciate your answer, because I think a lot of times, like, a young men who don't have guidance, going back to what we said earlier of like, I was raised on the TV. Like I look at this, I think now in today's society, they look to entertainers and celebrity and athletes and stuff like that. And because of that, now we have the YNs and the shiesty, you know, like we have a lot of different like pathways that the young children are taking that isn't necessarily the best. And I think
I'm optimistic though.
And that's what I'm going to say. I think it's up to us as an older generation to be more intentional, because prior to, you know, we had so many positive influences and representation of what the Black experience was and what it was to be Black and proud and to be positive. And so I feel like that is what you're setting out to do, and you're seeing that narrative be changed,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
of what it is to be a young Black man in America. And I think that it is so powerful what you're doing in the community, and it's carrying a seed. Like, if you carry the seed and now it's just a little baby plant.
I know.
For those, now it has roots.
And it's interesting, even with like diversity. I think probably, 94% of our boys are Black. We have some Hispanic kids, but we also have a few white kids in there. And like, it's interesting because like for us, you're in our program for 3 reasons. Either your father was murdered, long-term incarceration, well, let's say died, majority murder, but like long-term incarceration as well over 15 years, could be deportation, right? So like, it's interesting because we don't really talk about faultlessness with our boys, like in large groups or anything like that. It's usually, we're a mentorship group. So we ask the boys, if somebody asks you, just say you're a mentorship group, right? But they all share something common where they won't have a physical relationship with their fathers, right? And it's interesting to see even our 2 white kids going to Ghana with our boys, and they're, you know,
I saw those pictures.
But it or our boys going to camps over the summer in New Hampshire and Nashville, North Carolina, and like going to these different places, because that's the real world. The real world is like you're going to be around many different people, and you need to know how to communicate and have appreciation for different cultures and interests, right? And so that's another part of things that we're trying to share with our boys.
No, I love that. And then for the 14 years that you've done, like you said, 25, and then I'm sure, what's the youngest kid you have right now?
Youngest is 10, so they joined between 10 and 12, and they're with us, for a long period. They're with us till 21, but like once it's lifelong.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's say Deb said that in her episode. She was like, with mentorship, eventually it can turn into a more personal relationship, and then it's not your mentor anymore. You're calling your friend like, hey, I need some advice.
Exactly.
What do you think about this job offer?
Yeah. And I call, we talk a couple times a year too, me and Deb, and just kind of like, have little conversations and things like that. But we look for the older folks, but I'm optimistic about some things being turned around, especially in our culture, and what the focus and priority needs to be. Because if we keep going down this road, it's just gonna, it's gonna crash and burn. So we all we got, exactly.
So definitely, you're putting in the right seeds and making the right deposits, and it's showing up. 14 years later, you're seeing the effects of that.
No, and we would definitely want to see, as we wrap up. This has been a great episode.
Y'all should interview the boys, by the way.
Listen,
that's the magic right there.
It's part 2.
That's the magic.
Honestly, I feel like we haven't even got through a lot that we would love. So we'd love to interview you again and, bring you on the podcast. But just to wrap us up, where do you see Son of a Saint in the next 5 to 10 years, especially as you complete a good 14 and very impactful 14?
I see us having an amazing 20-year anniversary. I know that much. Continuing to grow. We're serving about 500 boys starting in January each year, and that's split from our core boys that are getting 24-hour support and everything, to even kids, another 200 that we're supporting through our education program, and some alumni. So it's to continue to grow that. Hopefully we're doubling up or tripling up on that in New Orleans. I think for us, it's people really seeing the work that we do, because I think most nonprofits think like this. They're like, okay, people see the surface, but they don't really see the work and appreciate it. So for me, it's the public understanding a little bit more about the logic model behind what we're doing, and like why focusing on this particular age, the holistic nature, the long term, and how we're doing it is like, wow, we're going out and paying for all these studies, and we got enough studies. Like we know what we know what's needed.
Y'all are doing the work.
It's like in New Orleans, we always talk about homegrown. Like this menu, this is right here in New Orleans. The ingredients, how to do it is right here, and don't get lost in like the success, right? Like as far as it's really at the end of the day, we're still, I feel like, sort of a grassroots organization at heart. You know what I'm saying? So. It's people really truly understanding that, but not just in New Orleans, but outside New Orleans, nationally and globally. So I hope our model is used in other cities. Now, I'm not trying to operate Son of a Saints everywhere, but where groups are using our model to inform their work, is really important to me, so that the kids are served better. And ultimately, maybe we're out of business because all our kids are doing great and we've broken the cycle.
I know, that's
right.
That's
the real goal.
I'm doing podcasts, just interviewing other people.
No, we're going to have you on a part 2 study.
funny.
No, I'm just saying. I mean,
I was like, just know we have you on record saying that you're willing to come back.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm happy to come back. I mean, I enjoy this. I enjoy this. Is very. It feels like I'm at home. So
and that's what we want, because I think when you talk about professionalism and when you talk about just why we created this podcast, I think for a lot of young people who don't really know where to start, it can be overwhelming and it can be overstimulating. And I think what we wanted to set out was to create casual conversation about real applicable business practices, whether it's in a corporate space or an entrepreneurial space, and making it more digestible for young minds to be able to understand and then go out and prepare themselves and apply it. Yeah. So with that, Sonny, I think you've done an amazing job of sharing your story. And I just appreciate you detailing everything, because I think we started this conversation talking about kind of a place of lack of, like, when you don't have, a certain presence, what does that look like? Or when you don't have access to certain resources, how does that go? But I think what you've kind of detailed to us today is that there's so much power in you. And a lot of the times you have everything that you need to be successful and to execute. And for the things that you don't have, life and God and the universe or whatever it is that you choose to believe in will help bring you friends along the way to help you.
Can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone.
At all.
You can't do it alone.
No.
And so one thing that we like to do when we wrap up our episode is give everybody a little piece of parting advice.
Okay.
And so I want to ask you, what advice has a mentor given you that sticks with you to this day that you think all young people should know, like, the sooner the better?
I mean, this has been said before, but tough times don't last, tough people do. And it's not, it's real simple, and it's so true. And that, like I said earlier, we've all survived things to be here today, right? And so it's just like how your outlook on it, and some patience and time, getting through it with some time and some grace helps out a lot, So tough times don't last, tough people do.
I love that. Yeah. Can you also share, since we're wrapping up, how can people find you and also support Son of a Saint?
Yeah, so they can, follow us on Son of a Saint, Instagram and social media. It's Son of a Saint ORG. Make sure you put the ORG at the end of it. And you can see a lot of the things that we do with the boys, And, I mean, my personal is Bivian Lee, so it's basic.
Make sure y'all tap it in.
Yes.
But if you want to get the behind the scenes, no, it's just all good. More on the personal side, but yeah, that's it. And our website, sonofasaint.org. We have various events throughout the year. We're always recruiting mentors, and it's not just male. Well, our mentors for the boys are male, but like, there's so many opportunities for women to get involved. Yeah, we absolutely. We have volunteers. Obviously, we have volunteer drivers, and women can do that too. But it's so interesting because that's the time where you're spending 30 minutes, 40 minutes. A day on a Saturday morning talking to a boy about what's going on. Those are very impactful, not just the male relationship that they have. And so women who are leaders in professional spaces or not, whatever they have, they can lead groups for our boys so that they could explain what they do, how they do it. And so we take, anybody and everybody has a good message and it's consistent. So
I love that. Takes a village.
Takes a village for sure.
Takes a village. So.
Thank you again, Sonny.
All right, thank you for having me.
We appreciate you.
Luckily, I had the privilege of working with Son of a Saint for I feel like a few years now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm so glad that you and Amari were able to connect because y'all do have very similar stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll close this out.
I'm going to have you on my podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'll go ahead and close this out. So this is the end of Standing on Business podcast with our guest, Sonny Lee. And you could follow us on standonbusiness.pod and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you.